Yo, welcome to the Hoop Objective with your boy Armani. Today is the day that we start the breakdown series for each and every NBA team. I'll be doing the breakdown for every NBA team that either missed the playoffs or gets eliminated in the playoffs. I'll be doing it in a random order, but today I will start with the worst team in the league, the Houston Rockets. These breakdowns will be as detailed as possible, and I'll be looking at the best and most realistic option for each team. And without any further delay, let's get started. To start off, the Rockets are a rebuilding team that of course was really bad this year. They ended the season with the league worst record at 20-62. They were the league's worst defensive team as they ranked 30th in the league in opponents' points scored per game, and they were also a below average offensive unit as they were ranked 19th in the league in team points scored per game. As you could see, there are many things they can fix, but we are going to start this video talking about a guy who didn't even play this year. You see, the very first issue with the Rockets that needs to be addressed is the John Wall situation. What I want to say first and foremost is that there honestly isn't a crazy reason to have to trade or buy out Wall. The Rockets won't be in the market for a big name free agent this offseason, nor will they be contending for anything. John Wall also does not have much trade value at all. You trade him, you would either have to trade him for another bad contract or you would have to give up a pick for a team to take him. In that case, it will be extremely counterproductive to trade him. I also believe that buying him out isn't in the best interest of the organization if you have to stretch a contract over multiple years. If the organization was smart, they would much rather take the hit for a 1 year instead of multiple. Having said all of that, I know that the Rockets want to / will make a move to get rid of Wall. In that case, the Rockets should favor a buyout, but only if it's favorable towards the organization. The Rockets have all the leverage when it comes down to buyout negotiations because they aren't contending anytime soon, so they don't really have to get rid of Wall. A buyout will only significantly benefit Wall himself due to wanting to compete and find himself in a more favorable situation. In this case, the Rockets should dictate the terms and get to a buyout deal that will benefit them the most. A type of deal that I'm referring to will be one that the Rockets will still only have to sign a 1-year deal, and they'll only have to pay him 30 to 50% of his original salary. In a move like this, the Rockets will save about $14 to $23 million, and you will only have to take the remaining cap hit for 1 year. Again, the Rockets have to dictate terms due to having all of the leverage. Chris Wood. Here's my thing with Chris Wood. He's a really good versatile big who can shoot at a high clip and hold his own defensively. Normally, I'll be saying that any team that he is on should keep him at all costs, but this situation is different. I believe that the Rockets should shop Wood this offseason for multiple reasons. For one, Chris Wood is coming up on the last year of his deal that's only worth $14.3 million. He will be looking for either an extension or he will be looking to get paid in the 2023 offseason. Neither situations would be ideal for the Rockets. If you extend him, you will be extending a 26-year-old forward that will not quite fit the Rockets' current situation in their timeline of the rebuild. Chris Wood will have a very little impact on how your rebuild turns out. If you don't extend him, he would just go get paid in the offseason. There would be plenty of teams that feels like they need one more piece to contend, and considering Wood's skill set, there will be plenty of teams that would specifically want him. I say that to say that Houston's front office could either foresee this dilemma and get something for him now, or they could wait and deal with this later. They obviously have little to no benefit keeping him, especially because they are rebuilding. They can either become a victim or beneficiary of Wood's market. I wouldn't tell y'all that a player should be traded without giving y'all trade examples, of course, so I came up with a couple. The first trade will be with the Bulls. The Bulls will receive just Wood, and the Rockets will receive Patrick Williams, Kobe White, and a 2022 second-round pick. In this trade, the Bulls will be able to get a guy that they could drastically improve their chances at becoming a contender with. The Rockets will be able to get a guy that could end up being similar to Christian Wood in terms of play style, with the perimeter defense and stretching the floor, but matches their timeline more. He is coming off an ACL tear though from last year, and he also still needs some development. They will also get a guy in White who hasn't been able to quite make an impact with the Bulls, but he still has the potential to be a really good guard in this league. The second trade that I have would involve the Denver Nuggets. In this trade, the Nuggets will be receiving Wood only. The Rockets would receive Aaron Gordon, Bones Highland, and the Nuggets' unprotected 2024 first-round pick. In this trade, Denver would be upgrading at that fourth spot while also getting out of a bad contract in Aaron Gordon. The Rockets will be giving up a good player while also taking in a bad contract. What makes this trade worth it is that they would be getting a guy in Highland that was really dynamic in his rookie year, and you could see the potential that he has all year. They also get an unprotected first round pick for the future. Denver could also add a second round pick or two to sweeten up the deal. Also, taking in a bad contract wouldn't be too bad for Houston, considering that they will be rebuilding for the next few years anyway. When it comes to free agency, Houston will not and honestly can't do anything super flashy. The big free agents won't be looking to go there anyway. But what the Rockets can do is get some gritty, tough, defensive-minded vets that can help improve Houston's league worst defense and also help them establish a culture and an identity. When watching the Rockets last year, it was clear that their young guys lacked that valuable guidance that you could get from vets. It was obvious that they were just winging it all year and they needed that advice. Stephen Silas is also trying to establish a culture that would be very tough to establish without having those tough defensive-minded vets in there. So I actually have a few guys that Houston will be able to make an impact on with their young core, but are also affordable. In my opinion, Houston's number one free agent option should be Gary Payton II. Gary is an athletic defender that is also an energizer bunny. He's a guy that will make an immediate impact in improving your team defense also. He would also be able to show Jalen Green, KBJ, and Josh Christopher what they could do if they use their bodies and athleticism to their advantage on defense. He also could bring some championship pedigree if the Warriors win the chip this year. The other guys that I believe would be very good acquisitions would be Robert Covington and Stanley Johnson. Both of these guys would also help instantly improve that terrible defense, and these guys could also help kickstart molding this new culture. They have to prioritize defense, defense, defense. For a rebuilding team like the Rockets, getting the right guys in the draft is always the most important part in building your roster. I'm sure that the Rockets front office is very aware of that, and they should be putting that scouting team to work. With that being said, it's easier said than done. Nevertheless, I've created a draft board for Houston for both of their first round picks this year, comprised of who they should prioritize in the draft. They have their own first round pick this year that will be in the lottery this year, which I assume will be a top 5 pick, and they also have another first round pick that they will take from either Miami or Brooklyn, whichever is higher. With the lottery pick, I believe that they should prioritize Chet Holmgren. Not only do I believe that he is the best player, but I also believe he is the best fit. Chet will be a huge part of helping that team get better defensively for the long term, especially after averaging 3.7 blocks per game. Chet can also bring versatility offensively, showing the potential to be able to stretch the floor, run the break, and make good plays as a passer. He will also make a good little big duo with Jalen Green in the future. The second guy that I have on the board for them is Jabari Smith from Auburn. Not quite as good as Chet in my opinion, but he's a really good shooter and rebounder in his position, but not quite the defender Holmgren is. He would be a really good fit offensively for the Rockets or any team, but that does not quite help their defensive issue. The third guy that is on the draft board for the Rockets would be Jaden Ivey from Purdue. Pairing this uber athletic and hyperactive point guard with an uber athletic 2 guard in Jalen would be scary. You'll be creating an extremely dynamic backcourt that will end up being dominant. Every team that plays them better not have 1 but 2 guards that can be really good defensively, because if not, these two on the same team can kill you. I'm going to say that the second first round pick is going to fall between 16 and 20. With that pick, I have 3 guys that should be prioritized. Those guys are Mark Williams, Kennedy Chandler, and Trevor Keels. Mark Williams was named the ACC Defensive Player of the Year. He is a really good rebounder and energy guy. Those traits are what the Rockets need most, and Mark Williams can bring that. If the Rockets don't end up drafting Ivy early in the draft, a very reliable option at that point guard spot will be Kennedy Chandler. He's a very tough and high IQ guard who can bring that gritty mentality, and he can also get those young and dynamic guys the ball in the most optimal spots. Trevor Keels is an adequate defender who excels at getting shots off the dribble. He can be a guy that makes an impact for them in the future coming off the bench. As you guys can see, the recurring theme throughout this video is that the Rockets need to prioritize improving that horrid defense and making moves that will help kickstart building a culture that will be conducive to winning. There's a guy that was just recently fired that I think could make a huge impact with the Rockets in that sense. That guy is Frank Vogel. If I was Stephen Silas in that Rockets front office, I'm doing everything I could to add Vogel as an assistant coach to that staff. Vogel will be able to play an intricate part in building that defense, considering that his teams are consistently one of the league's best when it comes to defense. He would be acting in a defensive coordinator type role for them, and he will also be able to build some really important defensive habits with their young core. There's also one last thing that any young team would love to have that Vogel can bring, and that will be a championship pedigree. In Vogel's coaching career, he has consistently been in hectic playoff situations and deep runs in the playoffs. Let's not forget about him being a championship winning head coach with the Lakers. So as you can see, Vogel's resume is clearly enough to support the fact that adding him to Silas' staff could play a vital role in the development of that young core. So we have already discussed what the Rockets should do when it comes to buyout situations, trades, and the draft. There are a few other topics that aren't as important, but are things that I want to briefly touch on. For one, they should not trade Eric Gordon. For some reason, that has been something discussed within that franchise, and I don't understand why, to be honest. Yes, he is not that same guy that was shooting the lights out when you guys are making deep runs in the playoffs, but that's not what you need him for. What you need Gordon for is that veteran presence that will be vital to develop your young core. Like Vogel, Eric Gordon does know what it feels like to be on winning teams. It will be a huge benefit for the organization if he could spread that knowledge of his experience to his young teammates. In my eyes, it would be very foolish to take a guy like that out of your locker room for no good reason. Unless he asks to be moved, keeping him will help you for the long term. Earlier, you guys heard me talk about what that Rockets backcourt could look like if they were to draft Jaden Ivey. Well, if they were to draft Ivey and fill him into that starting point guard role, you wouldn't have much of a reason to keep Kevin Porter Jr. Yes, he's a really good 3-level shot creating scorer, but as a point guard, that wouldn't be what your team would need to become great. With that being said, if they were to draft Ivey, I would explore a trade for KPJ. This is not something that should be prioritized, but it should be more of something that should be kept in their back pocket. Last honorable mention that I have for Houston is that they have to pick up Jayshawn Tate's team option. He is a nice versatile and swift army knife type wing that's always nice to have in your lineup. Losing him for no good reason will also be foolish. And that's it for my offseason breakdown for the Rockets, y'all boys. I ain't have anything crazy for them, but I am under the belief that a successful offseason for them lies mostly in what they do in the draft and what vets they bring in to help them get that defense and culture kickstarted. But that's going to be all I have for Houston. You guys look out for the next breakdown, because the next team I'll be breaking down is the most disappointing team in NBA history, the Los Angeles Lakers. Be ready for that one. Thank y'all for watching, and I'm out.